I can start it now.
No, sir, I will update.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, we are live.
You live?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Good evening, friends, and wish all of you a very happy Diwali. In fact, I hope you're not bursting crackers and not doing violence to environment as such. So the Diwali is good when you have no crackers. So please take care of each one's health. And today also happens to be Children's Day. So we had to have this talk. We couldn't have postponed it to another day. And today we would be discussing on learning crisis leading to a generational catastrophe amid coronavirus pandemic, impact on children's education and gender equality. And this is the 11th part of the series that has been started by IMPRI. In fact, it's actually the state of gender equality, #gender gaps, by Gender Impact Studies Center of Impact and Policy Research Institute, in collaboration with Delhi Post News, Gender Center for Research and Innovation, and Citymakers Mission International. Today we have Professor Shashwati Paik, who is a faculty in School of Education in Azim Premji University. Since 1997, Shashwati has been involved in research in social sciences. She started her career as a researcher working with NGOs in North India. She worked in the editorial team of a magazine on Geographic Information System, GIS, published from Noida, Uttar Pradesh. The magazine's focus was on the possible use of GIS and remote sensing in the field of development. Then she moved to research in social sector with special focus on adult literacy and continuing education. She worked in a research project in the State Resource Center, Haryana, and was later involved in teaching and professional training in Hamdard Educational Society in New Delhi. Shashwati also worked in the print media on ICT in development and regularly contributed to a monthly magazine named I4D, ICT for Development, for a few years. The magazine was published by an NGO, Center for Science Development and Media Studies, CSDMS, Noida. Later, she worked in a project on midterm evaluation of 11th five-year plan in ISEC Bangalore, which is called Bengaluru now. In fact, she is a PhD in MPhil from Center for Study of Regional Development, CSRD, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. She's got masters in geography from Vishwa Bharati Shantiniketan with specialization in terrain evaluation and remote sensing. Shashwati is interested in two main areas of research. First is exploring the challenges associated with the schools, school systems, and schooling processes in the challenging areas, especially those having challenge in physical access, frequently hit by natural disasters or affected by the armed conflicts. The other area of research interest is use of innovative tools and techniques in analyzing various aspects of schools and education system. So, so today's speaker is well versed with the topic for our talk today. So, without much time, I think, and further delay, I'll ask Shashwati to just take it over, and then we'll have discussion after the talk.
Thank you, Induji, and happy Diwali to everyone. And thanks for this opportunity. And I'm very much thankful to Impact and Policy Research Institute, especially Simi and Arjun, who approached me for this talk. And I found this is the kind of day when we can talk about educational opportunities and listening to the bursting of the crackers and all these. Still, we are talking about something which is not so good, so pleasant. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I would like to just share my screen so that I can start my introduction about what I'm going to talk about today. And as Induji has said, a quite elaborated description about me, although I am a geographer, but I shifted my area from physical geography to social geography, and that is more fascinating for me in terms of very other issues I can look at from very different lens right now because of probably that kind of exposure I had as a geographer. So I am going to talk about the learning crisis leading to a generational catastrophe amid the coronavirus pandemic, impact on children's education and gender equality today. And today is Children's Day, and also you know that a few days back, probably 3 days back, it was also India's Education Day, National Education Day. Uh, Whereas children's education is so important at this juncture. We know that most of the schools are now closed, and for last couple of months it is closed. So thinking about the children who are during this pandemic are not in a probably very good shape, majority of them. I wanted to dedicate this talk as well as this kind of discussion to those children who are not so fortunate, and they are not fortunate today, probably they are not fortunate for many years. And I am researching on these areas for last almost 8 to 10 years. I am involved into some areas which are disaster prone area or unplugged conflict area where children are not in a good shape. Specifically, the girl children are very much vulnerable over there. So, with that brief introduction, I would like to tell you a brief thought behind it. Probably many of you could understand many different kinds of news which were coming during this pandemic, especially during the first phase of lockdown. So the kind of stories which were heartening me, one of the story was the small child labor who was coming from somewhere in Andhra Pradesh, and she was walking for 150 kilometers. And just before reaching Bijapur in Chhattisgarh, she died because of dehydration. And she was only 12 years old child. And that actually shaked me a lot, probably shaked the whole India as well. At the time when people started talking about what is the rights of the migrant laborers, what should be done, etc., I was just questioning myself why this girl was in the chili field, why she was not in the school like my daughter. So with that agony, I started again reworking on this. I started revisiting some of the places where I have repeatedly visited. And therefore, today I am here to share some of my experiences, which might be more from my field experience as well as from some of the data which are also not giving so much of good news about our children. And my biggest question today to be posed is how are our children today when it is a Children's Day? So, let me tell you, probably today's talk will highlight on two different points. One is exclusion of children from education system in India with few evidences from the countryside. And I'll give you some examples from one part of Rajasthan, which is Barmer district. And Barmer district is the extreme western part of Rajasthan, very remote area, and it is towards Pakistan border. And another area I'm going to talk about is armed conflict affected district in Chhattisgarh, which is Sukma. Probably you people know about these two districts. As I have visited these areas frequently, right now when I am completely not supposed to go to the field and I'm stuck at home, at that point of time, those children's faces are coming back and forth to me, and asking myself, how are they right now? Second part, which I am going to talk about, is issues related to out of school girl children who are either never enrolled or silently excluded from the education system, as evident from data and field experiences. So I'll try to re-examine the question of gender inequality as observed in the field from a practitioner's point of view. And today, the people who are listening to this talk and probably will listen to this talk later also, I would like to have valuable suggestions from them, because I am really not very sure of how to proceed, how to think about them, how to plan something for them as a citizen of India. So today probably I'll not be able to give a solution, but I would like to highlight on some of the issues which I have come across during my field visit as well as during my research on education situation of the children. So if you look at the already existing issues, you can see that from the Food and Agriculture Organization, India is the home of more than 190 million undernourished people. The Global Nutrition Report 2020 has identified India as a country with the highest rates of domestic inequalities in malnutrition. Here, 37.9% of children under 5 years are stunted and 20.80% of children are wasted. These percentages are much higher than the Asian averages, which itself is giving something very alarming kind of situation. And right now, when there is a pandemic and when there is an economic crisis which is just knocking our door, we may see that this situation might be very much changed for our, especially our children, more so for our girl children. So let me share with you that I am coming from a background why I started working with these kinds of disaster prone areas or armed conflict areas, because one of the things probably many people don't know about my background. When my background comes, it comes with Jawaharlal Nehru University, it is from Vishabharati, which are all renowned institutions. But I am basically my schooling happened in a rural area of West Bengal, which was flood prone, and it was not in Calcutta. Mostly when it comes from West Bengal, people know about the Calcutta and periphery, but I didn't bring up, my upbringing was not happening in Calcutta. So when I was in my middle school, we had examination at that point of time in West Bengal. We had annual examination in December, and we had a huge flood in my place, in my native village. And during September to October, almost for more than 2 months, my school was having a untimely closure, because it was a shelter for the children of the for the families and the children of the locality. So my school was not flooded. My school building was as is there, but my school was a shelter, and till now it happens to many schools. And as a result, more than 2 months, our school had an untimely closure. By the time it reopened in November, it was already kind of annual examination was very nearby. So we didn't have any classes anymore, and we straight away wait for our examination. And I found in the next grade, half of my classes almost was missing. Half of my classmates were not there in my class. And after a few months, I found them in the local fish market, in the local vegetable vendor, as a local vegetable vendor, or somewhere where some girls, they were actually married. Um, so this actually stayed with me for a longer time, because I was a child at that point of time. It shook me terribly, and I was just looking for them. I couldn't find out those children. And later part, when I started my research, on school education, I was trying to map what are the different kinds of states. And few years back, I just pointed out what are the different kinds of things happening across the states. And this was a kind of rough mapping, understanding where all these things are happening. And I could find in more or less each of the state, there is some kind of natural disaster which are happening at certain points of time. Not necessarily school building is getting completely destroyed because of this thing, but because of the shelter of the local people, schools are closed. And now, right now, we are seeing the school closure more because it is worldwide. We can see that school children are deprived of their education and so on and so forth. But in general, I am seeing that it is a seasonal closure for many places in India, which we don't, either we try to deny or we tend to ignore, because we feel that these are the small pockets and small number of children, which is not the fact. And I am writing again and again on this particular issue, because the children who are deprived from their schooling, formal education for a couple of months or so, and they don't have at the same time the support from their parents at the household, and they are losing their stationery, they are losing their textbook, everything. And we are expecting they will be in the same race with the other children who are much more privileged. They are going to the school regularly, they are having their formal education, they are but at the same kind of situation when it is coming to the examination system. And when I'm right now teaching in Azim Premji University, we have also these kinds of students in my class who are coming from these kinds of context, and they normally tell about their anxiety, why they are weak in certain things, because probably they didn't have schooling for many days together. So after this pandemic also, if we forget about this particular challenge which we have, probably that itself is a big mistake we are going to do. So on this Children's Day, again, I'm asking another question. Children around us who are more vulnerable, uh, are they very few? If I put all the children in a just like a globe, you can see there are different kinds of children lying over there. There are migrant laborers who migrate along with their parents. Sometimes they also work in different kinds of sectors, including industrial sector and agricultural sector. And they themselves, as a migrant laborers, they visit different parts, different cities, and therefore they are deprived from their regular education. There are also migrant laborers' children at native places who just wait for the kind of materials or the resources coming from their parents. And their education also completely dependent on their parents' earning, and they are probably in the native place, their kind of educational opportunity is also very limited. So within these two sets, you can see there are never enrolled in school, that kind of children. There are children who are also drop out. And the third grade, where I can see there are children who are never enrolled or drop out from other for different other reasons. They are also not very small in number, and there are very lucky few finally who are enrolled and going to school regularly. Probably those are the very few people we can see who are regular school goers, who are achievers. And here the question comes, is it because of the only poverty, or is it because of some certain other causes as well? So here comes two questions in my mind, and I'm still exploring that. My arguments and my kind of reasons I'm posing, if those are found to be wrong, I'll be more than happy to be proved wrong if these are wrong assumptions from my side. One is, do we provide enough support in our formal school system so that children aspire for education? And second is, do we pay enough attention to girls' education? If we look at this data, which is again from the government data, you can see always there is boys versus girls, there is a gap. And it is not necessarily because we have a gender ratio because of that. If you look at the kind of decrease of the girls children, this is one of the fact which I am going to pose to you to understand that there is always a gender gap across different kinds of education. If you start with the primary to upper primary, secondary, and higher secondary. And now next question is it only the kind of engagement of the children, or they are not coming to the school, or their parents are not sending? Is it that fact? Or is it also the fact that schools are also not enough for us? So let us look at another interesting data, which is talking about, if you look at the pie chart here, which is right now displayed over here, if you look at this, you can see the primary education, how many schools. If you look at this whole pie chart as 100%, these primary education provider schools is around 57%, and middle school providing schools are 29%, whereas a secondary and higher secondary, it is very tiny amount or very tiny percentages of schools which are providing your secondary and higher secondary schools, higher secondary schooling. Now the point is that when it looks to the, it goes into this next graph, which is showing the all areas and rural area, you can easily see the graph is just slowing down, it is lowering. And from the primary education to the upper primary, which is in my screen, it is showing like primary is the biggest one as green, second one is yellow, which is upper primary, then secondary, which is peach color, and last one is higher secondary, which is orange color. If you look at 16-17 data, you can see it is the latest data which is available so far with me. It is showing that how it is going down. Is it a good trend? That is another question I have. If we are not providing the opportunity to the children to come to the school for with a kind of aspiration that we can be something beyond elementary education, probably we will not be able to assure our children where they will be after some time. Let us go to some existing problems, and I will talk about these existing problems with two examples from my field. One is from Barmer in Rajasthan and one is from Sukma in Chhattisgarh. So already within the population, children are having two main sets of issues in education and health. And there are existing issues, and in education there are three kinds of issues. One is physical access, one is economic access, one is social access. And how those are happening, I'll just elaborate with those two examples. When pandemic has added on to more to these kinds of problems, and these set of problems might be more accelerated because of the school closure, because for so many months, if children are not attending their school, they are not in touch with any kind of formal education system, probably it will be too much to understand that they will do good in the normal standardized examination later. And later part will tell them that you are the failures, and more so for the girl children again. So I'll talk about two different areas. One is in Barmer district in Rajasthan. Uh, there is a block called Shiv, which is in the extreme western part of Barmer. And from Barmer main city, it is almost 60-65 kilometers away from Barmer city, where children are coming from very far away place. And I will talk about those children and what are the struggles. In Sukma, Chhattisgarh, the set of problems are completely different. That's why I have taken these two. Although Barmer, I am talking about only one block, which is a huge block. You can see the population is around 2.4 lakh. Whereas in Sukma, Chhattisgarh, it is a small district in respect of that population. It is only population is around 2.7 lakh. But these two areas have different characters. On Shif, this in Rajasthan, Barmer, it is more or less chronic drought prone area where normally seasonal drought is very common, and in some places it is more or less throughout the year the water scarcity is a problem. Whereas in Sukma, Chhattisgarh, it is not the water problem, rather it is very full of forest. 65% of this Sukma district is full of forest. But in Sukma, you will see lot of residential schools because majority of the population belong to tribal children, tribal population. So I will go to the next slide, where I'll just give you a brief and then I'll go to the field story directly. So one is total number of schools in Shiv block, which is in Barmer. There are 297 schools, and total number of students studying there is 33,000, more than 33,000. In Sukma district, whereas there are total number of schools is 1,048. Out of them, many of those are residential schools of different types, and total number of students studying in all schools is 46,072. Why I'm saying this? Because I am talking about very tiny number of children in India. It is only covering around 80,000 of children who are studying or enrolled in some school or other officially. Whereas data says that our total figure right now is this. It is 8 digit number. You can see it is more than 7 crore children who are enrolled. So I'm just talking about very tiny number because I know about these set of schools a little bit. I have visited these places number of times, but I know very little about it. But it is a kind of eye opener to me to talk about these kinds of issues which are still there. So for your quick understanding, I'm talking about this Rajasthan Barmer, which is here, located here. You can see the next is your Jaisalmer. This is the border. And if you go to this side, it is not very far from the Pakistan border also. And here is Sukma, which is in Chhattisgarh. And here is the headquarters of Sukma, where for a couple of years there is an armed conflict going on, and there are a lot of schools which are now converted into some schools called pota cabin or portable cabins, which are temporarily constructed earlier, but now those are concrete buildings and those are sort of permanent kind of school buildings. I'll talk about Barmer separately and Sukma separately because two different contexts, but problems are similar. What might be the possible reasons behind children's parents' aspiration for education? Does our form of schooling system assured, formal schooling system assured that? Let us examine that. So normally the aspiration comes from your parents. Your parents or our parents normally tell us to go to the school. Never a child thinks about his or her schooling, right? So the enabling factors might be your physical access, your economic access, and social access. So that will be enabling factor. However, the aspiration will come from your parents, and parents may ask their children to go to school for a better future, better livelihood opportunities. Let us see what is happening in Barmer in Rajasthan. So here you can see there is a fund. There are a lot of talks about Anganwadi ICDS, where women and children are supposed to get the nutrition and the other kind of health support. So in place like Barmer, this is one of the Anganwadis which very in a very difficult process it was to capture these photographs. And I'm very much thankful to all my students who have been into these places for a couple of weeks. They spent their time there and they captured a lot of data. Some of them are placed in such kind of areas, and therefore I'm getting that data from them. And I'm really thankful to all my parents, all my students who have actually played a big role in today's presentation. So no preschooling in most of the remote villages here. Extra pressure on elementary schools. What happens? The tiny kids, they come along with their elder siblings to the normal school and they sit there and they have their midday meal, etc., and go back. What is happening in these Anganwadis now? What will happen after the pandemic? I don't know. So that is my question. And in the villages having huge problem of illiteracy, health and hygiene related preparedness to the young children is getting neglected and completely denied in such kind of areas. So kind of question I'm posing here, what will happen to those kind of children who are already stunted or wasted, having such a certain kind of malnutrition? Probably it is just one area I'm showing you. It might be happening in many areas because Anganwadis are also closed. ICDS is dysfunctional in most of the states right now. Now, if you look at that particular area in Shiv block, you can see there are 297 schools and most of them are government schools. And there are very few private schools which are only 26 in number. Again, the government data shows that primary schools are 144. If you come to the senior secondary school and schools providing secondary education, they are 30, 13 and 22. Secondary is 13 and GSSS means government senior secondary schools. Those are only 22. So you can see the ratio from 144 schools to 22 schools, which are giving some kind of education in 11th and 12th grade, which will open your door for college education. And for your kind information, here the college is in Barmer city, which is from many of those villages. It is almost 100 to 130 kilometer away. And then there is no absolute transport communication from those remote villages. So if this is the kind of opportunities for the children, what is happening? Let us look at the gender disparity because of this kind of opportunities they are having. You can see here is the graph, which is talking about the classes here, 1 to 12 grade. And you can see the boys in green and girls in the blue. And you can see the way it is going towards 11th and 12th grade. It is very few girls who are actually reaching that 11th and 12th grade, and forget about the college education, because going for 70, 80 kilometer for just college education and every day coming back and forth, even if it is ship block, that block headquarters, every day you have to travel for 120 kilometer, and only one government college is there. Right now, I heard that there is also one or two private colleges which are coming up, but how much will be it will be accessible by many children over there, I don't know. So this is a kind of gender disparity. This graph itself is saying where the girls are dropping out and how they're getting silently excluded from the formal education system. Again, this is the number. You can see the numbers starting from primary, where girls are 8310, that is 8,310. Whereas in 12th grade, 11, 12th grade, only 518 girls are getting educated. You can see the clear cut reduction of the girls here. Again, for the boys, it is not very good situation as well because of the opportunity. And second thing is here, education is not a priority for many different reasons. Some of the reasons are also social reasons. I will come to that towards the end of this Barme story. So if you look at the kind of trend from ninth onwards, because up to 8th grade, it is free and compulsory education as per RT Act. And till 8th grade, a lot of schools are providing free and compulsory education over there, because majority of the villages are served by the government schools. And therefore, up to 8th grade, children are going to the school. The moment they are into 9th grade, for the girls, the dropout is very high because of different reasons. I'll come to that later. For boys, it is also high because after 8th grade, they get the license for auto driving or something. They go for that kind of opportunity, or they go as a migrant laborer to along with their parents to other city, other nearby city, and therefore there's a dropout among the boys as well. But for the girls, the story is completely different, and sometimes it is not so comfortable when I listen to those stories and when I see the kind of practices in the classroom over there. So let us quickly go through the next part. First is I spoke about the physical access of the schools. What is the physical access we are talking about? Metal road, non-metal road. Normally government data is posing that as a all-weather road, metal road and non-metal road kind of things. If we look at these two different kinds of areas, it depends on what kind of terrain you're talking about. Probably metal road is not possible in every kind of situation. And you can see this particular picture is from Bardmet, where you can see there is absolutely no road. Believe me, there is school over there. And I was going round and round to figure out where is the school, because GPS doesn't connect over there. You don't have internet active connection in most of these villages where I have been. And this is another kind of situation. It is not necessarily from this kind of terrain. It is from another location, which is in Uttarakhand. I am just trying to talk about the physical access when we say it is not a kind of standardized thing you can think of. Physical access matters. And when there is no road at all, there is no transport communication at all for your government schools. And in this kind of situation where children have to travel for 2 kilometers, probably it is easier than this kind of situation where children have to travel for 1 to 2 kilometers. So the situations differ from across the country, and therefore we have to think what kind of physical access we are talking about. In Barmer, in this kind of situation, it came like most of the villages are very scattered, and those are very tiny, and therefore the school merging started happening. And as a result, there might be one hamlet which is 5 kilometers away from the current school. As a result, the children of 5 to 10 years, they are also traveling every day 8 to 10 kilometers to just to access the school. And here in Barmer, sometimes the scorching heat goes up to 50 degrees, 52 degrees centigrade. So this is the situation. It is exactly from the area where I often go. There's a huge water scarcity. And during this pandemic, we're talking about the washing the hands and hygiene and all kinds of things. You can see that a child is just washing the dish with the sand, and forget about the washing hand. That is a kind of luxury for them. And sometimes drinking water itself is a big issue. And most of the schools are having their rainwater harvesting kind of facilities if at all rain comes. So sometimes rain comes and they are very fortunate to have huge amount in the because their kind of requirement is also very low because they stay in that kind of situation. You can see the kind of uh, amenities over there. And in this kind of situation, if in the school there is no proper physical infrastructure, including the ladies' toilet, functional toilet, you can imagine what may happen to the girls and how many girls can continue their education beyond middle schools. And economic situation, many times it happens like it is completely a drought prone area, and therefore absolutely there's a crop failure. Recently there is a jeera harvesting which is going on in that locality, and that is giving a lot of profit to them. But during this lockdown, again, because of the limitations in terms of the mobility of the trades and commerce services, I don't know what is happening in terms of the economic situation over there. Now, this impact of livelihood aspects, if you look at Barmer kind of situation, which is not only one locality, again, I would like to re-emphasize on the area that I am just talking about one block and few schools where I could be there physically, and I'm a single person, and therefore it is not possible that I can talk about all schools. I'm just talking about a few schools where I have been, where I have seen these kind of situations, but more or less the school children in that kind of locality across the country are having similar kind of pains and kind of exclusion. So you can see the extreme and uncertain weather condition, more marginal workers, limited resources, huge illiteracy among adults, schooling is not a priority, and limited livelihood options. Therefore, lack of purchasing power to buy children to required materials. Although we say free and compulsory, but everything is not free. You have to buy your pen, pencil, and stationery for your children. At least you have to bring some kind of uniform. And in many of these areas, uniform is also not distributed for your kind information. So migration happens, increased burden on children in the form of wage work or housework in some households. Traditional belief systems along with the limited livelihood opportunities are making the situation more complicated. I would like to emphasize on this area because the kind of pain the girl children are having in this kind of situations, you can't just imagine. Many of you probably have never heard of it. And we just listen to those kinds of government data that female feticide is happening, there is a dowry death and all these things. But when you listen to these kind of stories from the children in the school, it actually gives you a lot of different kind of feeling altogether. And I have to bear the pain almost every year when I go to this kind of area. So I can give you an example like 11, 12 years old child was in very much anxiety, and she started asking one of my students, can you just save me from this place where children are more normally getting married at 13 or 14 years age, And last year, when my students went there, they found in third grade, most of the children were wearing a kind of thread, which is showing they are already engaged. Third grade, I'm saying third grade again. So female feticide is very often, child marriage is often, dowry death is common, and gender discrimination within the school is huge. And I listen to many of the boys here in the classroom itself, they are bullying the girl children, saying that, oh, you also understand some maths, oh, being a girl you are also getting educated. These kinds of taunting is happening from the children itself. You can imagine what is happening in their family and surroundings itself. So social stigma causing health issues among the girls, because most of these areas are so remote. Female teachers are very rare. As a result, uh, the children who are, especially girl children, when they are reaching puberty, they start dropping out. They are not able to speak out about their problems in the school, and many times they don't feel very safe and secure on the way to the school and coming back from the school, and therefore they drop out. There are a lot of parental pressure also, and sometimes I imagine myself as a parent situated in environment kind of situation, probably I also could have think of sending my child for 10 kilometers, which is so remote. So instead of the midday meal, probably in these kinds of areas, a kind of transport facility will be more useful rather than midday meal and all these kinds of stuffs which we are thinking of. Many times the children come with a breakfast, heavy breakfast, and they don't even have the midday meal. That is a separate story altogether. So when I look at the boys and girls in barmaid kind of situation, I can see this kind of gap, and it itself tells hundreds of stories to you probably, that this is the kind of situation, and girls are here, and slowly they will be excluded immediately after the 12th grade. Rarely the girls go beyond 12th grade. So existing issues are already there. There is a lack of development initiatives for infrastructure, no transport to schools located far from the dhanis or the local hamlet, rare opportunity beyond elementary education, and college is 70-80 kilometers. That is the brief about it. And probably therefore I'm saying that local teachers and female teachers and local or school transport is most important. During this pandemic, when in place like Bangalore I'm situated in right now, when the debates were happening around online versus offline and so on and so forth, I just thinking about all these places where electricity is a guest for the many of the households, where only 1 hour or 2 hours they get electricity. There is no internet connectivity. What will happen to these children? We don't know. So there are 101 schools having single teacher here, almost no involvement of community people and panchayat in school development. Many girls drop out after entering middle school if female teacher is not there in school. One of the reasons is also dysfunctional toilet. So in this kind of situation, you can imagine these are the hamlets, believe me, teachers also stay in these kinds of areas. Those who have to stay there by default because they are placed and they got transferred from some other areas. Now coming back to the dropout, you can see dropout before 8, dropout after 8, dropout after 10th or 12th. You can see it is completely, it is happening here. And this itself is showing that dropout is happening towards 7th and 8th grade onwards. You can see huge dropout, especially among the girls. So now if I look at the school, there are a couple of problems. Lack of basic infrastructure, health and hygiene is attached to that, transport and communication, lack of female teachers. And in the female teachers, you can see girls enrollment and detention and addressing girls issues that is not happening because of the lack of female teachers, lack of accessibility to higher education, lack of local teachers. These are already existing problems. And now imagine during this lockdown, there is no schooling, and by March they didn't get the textbook also for the new academic year, and they are completely out of touch of formal schooling. And you can imagine what was happening earlier in child labor and child marriage. It will definitely increase more. Community connect and teachers life in isolation is another agony for the local teachers over there. So right now if you look at it, the same kind of framework I have shown you. Health is, because of the health situation, there is an ICDS and midday meal kind of program. Good and very welcoming kind of initiative from the government. How it is going to happen now during this pandemic, I don't know. Many of the schools I heard that they are completely shut down during this period of time and there is nothing happening called midday meal or ICDS. Physical access is already a problem with availability, distance, and transport. You can see economic access, which is affordability and priority. Of course, when it comes to the priority, it is for the boys rather than the girls. Even if it is going to be online also at some point of time, um, I think girls will not get any chance to get that kind of online education. Belief system and traditional practices which are getting into the social access, and this pandemic will actually worsen the whole situation indeed. Now coming back to another area, which is Sukma, which is unconflict area, and many areas, schools are not running within the village. Rather, the children are shifting to the residential schools and they stay there. And these residential schools are not very small one. Pota cabin schools are having 500 plus children in some of the Pota cabins. These are called portable cabins. It is in informal way, it is called Pota cabins. If you look at Sukma as a district, there are again, there is a huge anomaly here. You can see primary schools 751, and when it is coming to higher secondary schools, it is 16. And this is the area where it is one of the districts in Chhattisgarh which has a very high illiteracy, and it is full of tribal population who don't speak Hindi. And here, the problem is completely different from Barmer, because most of the teachers who come here, they can't understand the children's language, and children also can't understand the teacher's language. And already existing gap in education is there. And during this time, when residential schools are completely closed, 2 3 days back, I was having a conversation with my student who is right now working there, who was an alumnus from our university. He was saying that all the schools are right now closed, the Pota Kamin schools, the residential schools. Now you can see again, there's a dropout from here to here, grade 9 onwards, you can see the number is decreasing. In these areas which are already in dark, already they have an illiteracy issue, already there are a lot of issues in terms of the gender equation. Here again, we are not focusing on the girls education, or you are not focusing in general also the children's education. If you look at this set of problems, existing issues are there in terms of physical, economic, and social and cultural access. And in the cultural social access, you can see there is a language issue and the cultural contrast. Many times what happens is teachers can't understand the culture of the children where they are coming from. And in these residential schools, which are found established because of the kind of armed conflict happening over there, and many times schools were getting affected because of that. The kind of initiative from the government was this residential school in places like Sukma, Dantewada, and Bijapur. And Bijapur was the place which actually strike my mind, because that girl who was the migrant laborer, she was also from Bijapur. And Bijapur is the place where the armed conflict is more intense rather than Sukma district. Therefore, in these kinds of districts, if you go, it is very difficult to work on a particular block intensively, as I have done in Barmer. So I'm trying to figure out if I can do it post the pandemic. Probably I'll get some opportunity to do that. So there are a lot of frameworks which talk about the kind of problems and issues of exclusion. And there is a famous zone of exclusion which is given by CREATE framework, which is by DFID, UK-based organization. It talks about different kinds of zones of exclusion, starting from the preschool, and there are children who are never enrolled in any kind of school. There are children who have attended school but drop out after primary, then after middle school, then after secondary school, then after higher secondary school. So if we look at this zone of exclusion, probably this kind of time when school is closed for so many months together, we have to understand probably these zones are getting expanded in terms of the number of children getting accumulated in each of these zones, which are quite alarming. We can close our eyes right now, but we should remember this online education, what is happening right now, it is only serving less than 30% of the children in our whole country. Because if you look at the rural areas, there is around 70% of the total population live in the rural areas, and in the urban around 30% of total population. More than 70% children go to the government schools in rural areas where mostly online facility is not being provided. On the other hand, only 30% around children are going to the government school in urban area. If you look at rural school again, around 27% of children go to the private schools, whereas in the urban area, 70% children go to the private schools. Probably it is good that some of the private schools have started online education for different reasons, because they also have their own anxiety, and they are also, I am hearing a lot of different kinds of news that there is a kind of parents resisting on online education, they don't pay fees and all kinds of different kinds of problems altogether. And there are situations where girls are not getting that kind of opportunity because, again, because of the gender disparity. Still, I think for the majority of the schools, the government schools, it is still a dream that online education. Therefore, you can see more than 70% of children going to private schools who pay less than 1,000 rupees. They are very unlikely to get a decent online education at this point of time. Less than 30% of children who are going to the private schools who are paying more than 1,000 rupees per month, probably they are getting some kind of online education. There are exceptions although, but largely this is the kind of scenario. And we can assume that very few people, very few children right now are getting that online kind of education opportunity, although the data may say something else. But uh, I don't know how many schools are able to give that kind of online opportunity right now. And if this pandemic is not giving us a lesson to think about integrity of all the schools, and also understanding that the new normal might be little different, where we should be better prepared for this kind of situation, probably this kind of generational catastrophe may be resolved. Why I'm saying it is a general catastrophe? One is, normally we say that girl children are deprived, but we casually say that we should understand that girls children's education is more important, because they are going to serve the purpose as a mother or the family head tomorrow, when it is not necessarily it is a formal family head who is earning. They take a lot of decision in terms of the children's education. If we continuously deny those kinds of facts, probably the kind of situation we are going to face, we are not very much prepared at all. And right now, these less than 30% children who are getting that opportunity, probably they will be victims of all kinds of social unrest which are going to happen post this pandemic, when economic crisis will pop up as a major problem. Domestic violence has already started happening. Probably you are seeing the media news. Social insecurity will start happening because of this economic crisis and kind of social unrest which will be more after this pandemic. I am not very sure whether we are very much prepared for this kind of situation. During this lockdown period, you can see that there is a restricted mobility. Therefore, there is an economic crisis, again, low payment, limited earning, livelihood crisis, which are feeding like a vicious cycle here. And there is one other thing, which is child labor, child marriage, child trafficking kind of things, where again the girl children will be major victim. And we are going to miss many girl children during this pandemic. And whenever I'm listening to this cracker sound, I'm just thinking that 500 rupees is burst into fire. And we could have invested that money probably for one child's education. We could give them the school fees at least, or we could give the fees for the children for their textbooks. But unfortunately, today during this Deepavali as well as Children's Day, this is the time when we have to think about this again. And I'm closing it with Chacha Nehru's quote: "The children of today will make the India of tomorrow. The way we bring them up will determine the future of the country." And thank you for listening to this conversation. I would like to have very useful suggestions how to think, how to go ahead to get us better prepared. Thanks to the organization for organizing this lovely conversation opportunity. I'm closing it
Uh,
here.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Shashwati, for a very profound and a very interesting presentation. You did talk about, the prevailing conditions pre-COVID, on education, compare it from the two districts and the blocks in that in Chhattisgarh and Barmer. And at both the places, you were able to show that there is a decline as you progress in education from primary to senior secondary. And the girls fare worse than boys. Not that the boys are doing very well, because even their rates are very low. And so it's actually increasing to the illiteracy bowl of the country. And, you did bring in that how every disaster contributes to education suffering, and contributes to a whole lot of discriminations and exclusions that step in. And I think you did mention about I think you were able to show the various natural the catastrophes that we have, whether it's drought or it's earthquakes or tsunamis or flash flood or cyclone or landslides in different states. Many states had 4, some had 1, but a couple of them had more than 2. So I think so every drought, every natural calamity, on top of it, when you have the man-made disasters, I think it actually makes the situation worse for children's education. And yes, the girls suffer more, as you mentioned. And then I think you brought in this thing about how this girl from Bijapur, from Andhra Pradesh, from the chili fields, was coming back, and she passed away as she was reaching her home in Chhattisgarh. I think that is something very traumatic, which I think has been the migration story during the current scenario, in fact, pandemic. And I think the entire nation was shocked with this kind of migration disaster. I would say migration, the way the country, actually the country created this disaster beyond the natural disaster called COVID pandemic. So or health pandemic which took place. So I think you bring out this, and then I like the fact that you're talking about education not as a monolith, but talking also in terms of about the physical access to it, the economic access to it, and the social access to it. And there are quite a few elements to it. Physical access surely talks about transport and how far it is, and like whether it's Barmer or it's like in Barmer. No roads. In Sukma, you had Poda cabins, everything, but now the schools are closed due to pandemic. So what happens? Then you spoke about the economic access, about affordability and all that, and then about social access was about as to how I think like in Sukma you spoke about language and cultural contrast and also really matters. So I think it was a very interesting presentation you had. And I think then you came towards that during the pandemic times, we are talking of online education, when about 70% of rural children have no access to online education at all because they're from government schools and all. And, so already I think you mentioned about zones of exclusion 1 to 6. And my thing is, now we have all the zones of 1 to 6 have been removed, it's become one zone O, where I think every child gets badly discriminated. And this, you're talking about the generational catastrophe. It is a catastrophe. I think you raise this point very validly. And I think you come towards the end saying that, that how this entire, the educational divide which is taking place between boys and girls leads to, sexual abuse and trafficking and all. And there you mentioned that, how the girls suffer. I just have a point of, in fact, just want to add here that, there are groups like Arpan and in Mumbai who talk about child sexual abuse. And we are talking child sexual abuse also in a big way in the country. And we have realized as to how both the boys and girls, when it comes to sexual abuse, they are vulnerable. So there are many boys also who are open to getting sexually abused as well as trafficked. So I think this is something which, I think is pretty shocking. And today being the Children's Day, I think, what you talk about is not dismal, but it is surely shocking. And I think, as a country, we need to deal with it. And you mentioned about, Chacha Nehru's, statement that how we deal with children that's how the future is going to be dependent on the country. And, I personally feel that I think what he said was right. And I think the situation earlier was not that good, with the huge educational gaps that we had from primary to senior secondary. And during the pandemic, there's no data available at the moment, but we know for sure that the situation would have worsened. So this generational catastrophe talking about, which will have repercussions for many generations, So I think you raise a very valid issue, and I would surely want other people to just speak about some of these issues that is raised. These are very pertinent issues, and maybe the further researches would need to be done into these areas as to how this mishandling, manhandling of this entire pandemic actually has jeopardized the interest of the nation as such, because children are, and by the way, the children's future is not tomorrow, it's today. What we do to them today also impacts on the country. Tomorrow, I think, will be worse, but today, at least if we are good. So I think as a nation, I think it's a lot of questions you have raised. And I believe we have lots of participants also. So, and we would not want this to be prolonged for a long time, but Arjun, Semi, and other friends who want to also add, you have any questions to this? So do add. I think it's a very interesting presentation, Professor Shashwati, and thank you for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir,
Yeah.
Sir, yes. I'm saying, sir, we have Simi, we have Sarmishta ma'am also. Ma'am, you are in panelist, you can come. We have Lean also.
Then Lean is also a discussant, yes. Yeah, sure.
So we have 3-4 people. Yeah. I would request everyone to be brief.
Yes.
Simi, we start with you.
Thank you so much, Saswati ma'am, for your wonderful and passionate presentation. Thank you, Indu sir, for making your initial remarks and setting the tone of the entire discussion. Certainly, my views on the impact of the pandemic on the children is that children, we will just focus on India, because it's the same for around the world, but nonetheless, children are impacted from the pandemic, irrespective of their families' social status. So this being said, either you are a very rich person's child, or you are a very downtrodden child, you are impacted. So you rightly mentioned, ma'am, about the percentage, 70% of the children in the rural areas and 30% in the urban areas. So when we are focusing on the online education, is for the 30% of the population, for the children, it is not as if it is very smooth. The transition has been very difficult in the whole online education processes. Because if we see for people, those who are relatively well-to-do, they are struggling with providing appropriate spaces for their children to sit, for their children to learn during the online sessions, for at least for making them sit in front of the screens, be it mobile devices or in front of the laptops, and especially for the younger children who are not really matured enough and who would rather utilize those screens to play video games or to just fiddle with those devices. So learning out of that particular mechanism is very difficult. And certainly those who are totally detached, for example, the pupils in the rural areas, they know nothing. In fact, they have, as we have pointed out in our article, they are actually enjoying an extended vacation, just in the hope that sometime they might come back to the traditional forms of learning. So this is certainly a cause of concern. And for those who are spending time in their online education, there are so many negative challenges with respect to their health, obesity, frustration, anger, and even eyesight problems. Even there are several eye doctors who are actually saying that there are increased number of cases of those students who's from the students who are engaging in online education. So this is one point I wanted to raise over here. And certainly we are quite hopeful that the whole ICDS scheme was taking care of the children with respect to the midday meals, etc., etc. But because the children are not coming to the centers, Anganwadi centers, but still we cannot really discount the efforts that the Anganwadi workers are making in the midst of this pandemic. They are going door to door to provide the dry rations as much as possible, because we see they are also women who are going door to door. They are also compromising their health, risking their health, sorry, rather to say, and moving around their entire centers, locality, and trying to provide as much nutritious food or whatever food they are supposed to give to the children. So and of course the ICDS is it would be little um, uh, out of the way to tell that the entire system has become defunct. Otherwise, it would be little, um, so to say, disrespectful to so many Anganwadi workers and so many people in the entire system. Of course, the higher rung, we can always say that they are things are not happening, but ultimately it is from them from whom the reports are asked, right? How much targets you have achieved, and if there is some high level visit from a bureaucrat, then it is they who are answerable, at the ground level. So they are certainly working very hard, and children are actually finding it very difficult to stay at home, whether it is a child from the rural area or from the urban area, a child from the richest household or from the poorest household. So certainly this is a generational catastrophe that we have seen it. We are actually seeing it unfold in front of our own eyes, and you are very correct in pointing this out. So thank you very much, ma'am, for your very passionate presentation. Thank you so much. Over to you, Indu sir.
One point I would like to add on here, if I have just 1 minute. In some of the states, actually ICDS is doing a very good job. What I try to pose it here is not in generalizing. I'm not generalizing it at all, whatever I have cited. In some areas where ICDS was not so much active, probably those areas we don't know what is happening right now. But in some areas, for example, in Kerala itself, if I give you then examples, they are doing very good jobs, and there might be multiple different states who are actually doing a very good job. So I just like to add on there. It is not whatever I wanted to cite today is not necessarily it is a generalized idea. I just wanted to pose the kind of situations probably largely we are having, not anything very generalized. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Can we have Lynn and then Arjun come in?
Yes, I have, it was really beautiful to hear your sharing because I could relate to what you were sharing. But I have mixed responses actually. It's not to your sharing, but to the situation itself. You know, that this is like a difficult situation, and we're seeing sort of both ends of what is happening. Like there is like almost like a paradox that we're working with. You know, like if I am to reflect back, if we look at India as a democratic system where there is an election, is there any part of India which is not part of that electoral process? we can criticize it. We can say that yes, still there are poor people who don't have access to vote. But the point is, if you look at political will, majority of India is able to vote. So I feel there is a lack, a basic lack of political intent to make sure that education reaches every child. Like that is, the first sort of, I would say, issue for me, that there is not enough political will that every child receives education, receives nutrition, receives care, affection. So that's I feel that's one side of it. The other side I feel is just looking at the pandemic and the lessons we are learning from the pandemic is that there is a disconnect with nature, with the ecology, with the environment, that the ways that we are going is not working. Like we have to connect back with nature and natural ways of learning, being, living in the environment. So education also, it is there is in certain pockets, the connection to nature and that kind of learning is there, but that needs to be there more, you know so I feel like somewhere also including children themselves, like what do they want, because they are wise. I don't feel, I have been teaching also for many years. Every time when I'm with children, I feel they teach me more than I teach them also. There is a exchange, so hearing them, hearing their wisdom, what is it that they seek, how is it that they want to study or engage. Because partly I also felt when you were sharing, that maybe girl children are dropping off 10th 12th. Besides the social indicators, I think it's also the kind of education that is being provided. It's not very engaging, it's not very interesting sometimes. Like, we are not able to yet reach out to children with different kind of faculties. Like some people are visual, some people are oral, some people are kinesthetic, so they learn by touch, and sense, and we're not able to reach out. So even those who are in a schooling process, there is a disconnect. Like certain subjects they don't want to learn, certain subjects they want to learn because they find a connect with the teacher or they find a connect with the material. So how do you make the material more engaging? How do you make it more relevant, to a particular child, include that child's wisdom? And also in terms of exactly what you said, like internet, in the pandemic, there were a lot of community meetings that I was part of, where we were talking about how to make online education more accessible and the problems within that. Like what were the problems? Like initially the problems were that the parents didn't know how to connect online, those who had a device. This is for those. And then once the parents learned how to connect, then to get the children, then to get them to sit in front of the screen, then to expand it a little bit more to make the learning where they started bringing art of whatever was there in their kitchens to create those models to teach them. And then now if we talk about children who don't have access to the internet during the pandemic, how do we go about it? So there were interesting examples of like reaching out through radio, but this is what I feel needs to be done more. Like the state's resources like the radio, the doordarshan, that can be used a little bit more to ensure that this like education is reached even on a regular day. We don't have to wait for a pandemic to happen to realize that there are children who need access to education, and to use the resources we already have, like panchayats. If panchayat offices have radio transmission, if they have television sets, can some learning be imparted through those outlets? So these are a couple of thoughts I'm having. And also just to connect a little bit, because I also see a lot of rich children who have everything, who have all this, and yet they are lacking in things. Like for instance, there are children who lack parental affection, parental care, because the parents are out working all the time. During the pandemic, they were at home, many of the parents, because they couldn't go out for a job. But of course, like you pointed out as well, domestic violence, child abuse, child sexual abuse, we saw that there were increasing number of the calls made to 100 for child abuse were increasing. So these issues are there, but there is a sense that it's not just lack of resources, because I see this in the very rich children. that there is a sense that they don't have the love and affection sometimes also. So poverty is also of like multiple kinds, lack of resources is also of multiple kinds. So I'm in a bit of a mixed space, as I said. It's this sense of there are resources that can be used, there are resources that are being mismanaged. There is a need to rethink the whole paradigm, the whole education model, start again, connect with, maybe some more Gandhian ways as well, of self-reliance and the grassroots, connect back to Mother Earth. I think that might probably be some of the ways, but yeah, it's still something I'm thinking about. So thank you. And that's what I had to share.
Lynn, we have all these things already. We have new education policy. We have Atmanirbhar Bharat. We have so many things. Don't
We
worry.
have lots of things on paper, but
Yeah.
I think things have to be there in like reality. And I guess there are critiques coming of the new education policy as well. So
No, really, the reforms are on good spirit.
yeah.
But anyhow, Lynn has really tried to incorporate this catastrophe from various dimensions, be it also rich children, because there is disorientation, especially in this pandemic. And all these things really we are also talking about. One thing really I wanted to also highlight here was that ma'am really highlighted from those regions in both these districts, Sukma and Barmer, the dropout not at 10th or 12th, but 6, 7, 8. That is the main classes where most of the dropout is happening, class 6, 8, 9. And ma'am has also highlighted class 3, and your engagement is done. And because of poverty and also so many of resources, Sarmishta ma'am is here. Ma'am, are you there? Would you like to say anything? Your video is off. Sarmishta ma'am? Ma'am connected sometime back.
Can I come in, Arjun? It's okay until ma'am joins.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, sure.
So Arjun, you mentioned about the dropouts. In private schools also, we are seeing a number of dropouts in the lower levels, in the lower grades, because of the sheer inability of the parents to pay. And the schools will definitely keep charging the fee despite the demand from the parents to waive off the fee to a lot of extent, because of so many things not happening, activity fee, etc., whatever fee they are charging. But I don't know, we need to understand understand from the shoes of the schools as well. If they do not earn, who will pay the salaries of the teachers, salaries to the teachers and other working staff? So in this case, it is a vicious circle of lack of resources from for everybody, and the ultimate sufferers, as ma'am is mentioning, is the children. This is the generational catastrophe that we are inflicting from the top to the from the older people to the younger ones. Thank you.
Okay, let me again check with Sarmishta ma'am. Ma'am. Okay, we'll check again. Okay, let me just pose few questions, and Professor Pai can collate and then answer some few things really, and which are time tested, and because really the dropout is one of the worry, especially that there are variant aspect, mental to financial, as other discussants are also raising. But now we really have to put our best so that this dropout we can minimize, we can mitigate. So, ma'am, what do you think has been some of the best practices wherein we save some of this dropout or out of school or many of such scenarios, so that the learning is continued and there is impact of or steps which should be taken also at community level or a local government level to enforce that students are engaged, and we are not losing out so many things. Ma'am, over to you, especially pertaining from your field study experiences, other best practices, what should be done in these regions. Also, what government has earlier tried to have consolidated hostels for tribal hostels, and as classes start, because it's also a far-flung area. Now this pandemic has really given us a very different model, that you don't necessarily have to travel so much. So how digital technology can also be there, can be a mix, so that the learning is really strong and we move into the right quality direction. I will stop here. I have a few more points. So ma'am, yes, over to you. Indu sir, would you like to say anything, or ma'am can just, yes, answer some?
No, I think let her answer. Let her answer. Yeah, she can just go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Arjun. This is a very pertinent question at this point of time, that how to go about it. What I feel is pandemic is a kind of eye opener for us, that there is a learning gap which is going to happen in massive scale. However, the learning gap is already existing, as one of the panelists also was talking about it, that dropout happens normally because of the disengagement normally in the school. What is my thought is, right now, because of the pandemic, probably we are thinking about this learning gap and learning deficiency both. One kind of thing we can think of right now, one is bridge school kind of system, where there are some NGOs I know personally who have these kinds of facilities where they provide extra support to the children when they are going to the school and coming back from school. Suppose you have in number of homeworks and you don't have a set of parents at home who can engage you for that kind of homework. So they are coming to that kind of bridge school, and they are finishing their homework, having their kind of food also they are providing, because they are coming back from the school with hunger. So they are having their food there and they are going back to their own home. That kind of setting is also there with some NGOs which are right now happening in Madhya Pradesh, I know. For example, right now during this pandemic also, I found, especially in Azim Premji school, probably you know some Azim Premji schools are also there in some particular locations. Few days back, I came to know our teachers are regularly going to the community, not necessarily in the school, because the moment they are in the school, maintaining social distance, etc., is really a big challenge. The teachers are going to the community and they are fixing along with the community some kind of chopal somewhere in the temple, somewhere in the common space, because in the rural areas you will have these kind of spaces. Not only the Azim Premji Foundation, it is also happening in somewhere else. With one of my students is also working, they are figuring out some common spaces where they can maintain the social distance. People are going, having some kind of conversation with them. Maybe they are taking up some topic, just discussing with them. Because at this moment, probably more than the syllabus, it is also to work on the trauma of it. Children, many times, they can't understand what is happening around and why I'm not supposed to go to the school, not supposed to touch anyone, or I have to wash every time hands and all this. Again and again, if you have this kind of conversation, probably they will be coming out of that kind of trauma, first of all. Then you can get used to it, all kinds of conversation which might be aligned with your so-called syllabus or curriculum, or you can talk about in general, so that their interest lies over there for the learning. That what I normally say, that is a learning hunger. So we have to keep that hunger intact, and that can be done through the teachers, because teachers know them best. And the teachers are not necessarily also out of this pandemic, because of their parents also, they have to stay back home and we have to stay safe as much as possible. If we could think of something like, as you were saying, that telecasting through television, maybe over the phone. We can't think of smartphone for everyone, because I go to those kinds of places where internet itself is a big struggle. So there probably you can get a phone call, and some of my students, they are actually in a network right now in informal space. They are working with some children who don't have internet access, and they are working very well with only with the help of a phone. What they are doing, they are providing the textbook. They have negotiated with the school teachers and the respective government schools. They have provided the textbooks. These set of students, they are having their textbook in front of them, and they are just talking about one particular area, which is probably in 7th grade or 8th grade. They are just talking about one area, and there might be surrounding 2 3 more children who will be having the peer learning. Those kinds of things are also happening. But those are very small scale. What I'm seeing, that bits and pieces, I'm seeing those kinds of initiatives happening, and those are the kinds of hope I can tell you. But we can't only think of the internet, we can't only think about the kind of smartphone use and getting something. And online classes also not affordable by many of them, but I'm seeing the problem is somewhere else also in online. In online education, actually some of the urban children, they should be engaged in some way or other, otherwise they will be getting into some all kinds of video games, etc. Probably it is good for them, but the problem comes from other side, as Simi was also telling, that it is paying the fee, etc. That is a big question for many parents, and many areas online education itself is being questioned for that. But I don't think that if online is affordable and not problematic, we should continue. At the same time, we should think about those who are not able to provide that online, or get that online because of the affordability and other connectivity issues. How can we do it at second type, which might be through phone, which might be through teachers going and just talking to them, because sometimes teachers are very reassuring and they know them better. So in that way, if we can keep that touch with the community and the children, it might be better. At least a phone call in a week, maybe a conversation with a set of children, those might be useful. Some of those things are already working. That's why I just cited those examples. Induji, you can also share your insight, Induji, please.
I also had one follow-up question that usually, ma'am, the reasons for dropouts is also not something related to the resources at the school or the aspiration, but really the outlook that what will the child do after a while. So there is also, it is also linked with employment and also the sort of skill development. We, in terms of policy, we really pushed for this skill India and self-help groups, so many things, so that young women, young boys can make use of these things. What do you think in terms of policy? Some sort of more of vocational or those things should come at 10th, 12th, so that at least vocation is imparted, and also that economic and incentive, those can be provided, so as to it comes naturally and organically, also as a culture. Because ma'am, you really mentioned that at many of these places, since it's also a government structure, no local teachers, their culture is there. So how the whole pedagogy question also, Lynn was also trying to mention some of those, the connect. But in these areas also, because some places electricity is not there, and so many of things. But really the livelihood question also, you mentioned migration and that, so many things. So that I would say is also a fantasy, or also the sort of decision also the children are making. What do you think that in that aspect, what should be more of vocational things should be placed that way? There are many polytechnics and others, but really in a district you really have to go to 80 kilometers, 150 kilometers. What should be that incentivized model which also leads naturally for this sort of demand from the children, parents, community themselves? Yeah, ma'am, over to you.
Uh, yeah, this vocational education itself might be one of the ways, and it would be nice, because vocational education is very much important in country like India, where a lot of people have their traditional skills itself. But the problem is that I don't know what is the origin of it. The moment you talk about vocational education, it has its own connotation, and we interpret it in very different way. So as a result, if you look at the kind of things which are happening with Gandhiji's Nai Talim, or in Tagore's institution in Vishwavarati, there were a lot of things which are coming under vocational education, which was the initial thought. However, later part it was interpreted in such a different manner altogether, and it has come out with a lot of other kinds of interpretations, that if my child is going for a vocational education, that means my child is a backbencher. So the notion of the society has been built up in that way. So one of the things I would look back a little bit. saying that, in fact, in our country, a lot of problem lies with the fact that we are not educated. Probably most of us are not educated, we are literate. And we know a little bit of reading, writing, and I also call myself as a literate rather than educated. If we are educated, probably we didn't have to talk about so many things today here. And the one of the facts is that we are not thinking about the adults literacy, we are not thinking about the adults education. Long back when I was part of the national literacy mission, I have seen how school children, they were actually going back and talking to their mothers and the local, aunties, etc. They were actually running the class for their mothers and aunties. And in place like Haryana, when I was going for my field work, I could see the kind of change which was happening at the micro level. If we are not talking about the parents education, how can you expect the child will be taking vocational education? Because parents also interpret, right? So when we decide about schooling, we don't decide, our parents decide. The way they interpret education, we go for that kind of education. The moment we stopped thinking about the adult education, probably that is the kind of turning point when we didn't we lost a kind of half of the battle. We have to continuously focus on the adults education as well when we are focusing on the children's education, because without adults, children can't take any decision. So whatever we are going to do regarding vocational education, regarding online education, regarding the so-called education for the children who are coming from so-called educated and serving parents also, serving in a good IT sector or any sector. If we don't have education in real sense, probably we will not be able to provide that kind of guidance to our children. And if the children are dropping out, probably we'll have this similar kind of belief system altogether, that for the girls these kind of things are relevant, and for boys these kind of things are really being relevant. So it happens very much in urban areas. Some of my students, I can tell you, they belong to a very remote village, and right now we have online classes. They personally text me saying that please don't ask us to put the video or audio on, and therefore I never ask them to talk in the classroom, because the kind of background noise probably they are having, probably it is not very comfortable for them. But still they are in the online class because that kind of facility is provided to them. So it is fine if online classes going there and they are not switching on the audio, and it is not very much compulsory for them just switching on audio and taking part in the class, but they are listening. That kind of thing is required, and that should be okay for the teacher also on the other side of the online class. So what I'm trying to say is, without adult education, if we talk about vocational education, if we talk about any different kinds of skill building, etc., first we have to educate the adults in the family who takes major decisions about the children in the family.
Thank you, thank you. Now also, what in skill development also, now people are also learning so much of skills over YouTube, and so many for adults also, the whole skilling program also, or SSGs also is the same. So why not really make students to learn better craft, probably provide more of lab or that sort of thing also for the education? Because really, when I in my research and my experience, what I have really thought that many of them really want to leave the place. And I also from my hometown, as most of us do, because of the noise which you rightly mentioned, and because there is no focus or many things which is required there. So some solutions have come, but let us see what all can be done and emulated in these places. Indu sir, would you like to add anything?
No, I think, just that I think what Shashwati, you were saying about adult education is very valid. And, I think we have missed out adult education, which I remember even Ran Prasad Bismil had spoken about adult education in the 30s itself. So it was, I think, very important that, I think as an education policy, we need to also emphasize that. I think that's all I would say. I think it's, thanks a lot for this important discussion today. And, that's it, Arjun. That's it.
Saraswati ma'am, would you like to add anything? Or it's a Diwali, we can, quickly, we should wrap it.
It was
Yes.
nice talking to all of you and listening to Induji also. I have never met him, but I have heard of Induji a lot. So it was nice to talk to you, Simi, and Induji. And it could be better if we had more people on board who could also take part in the discussion. I hope a lot of my students who keep on listening to me, but they probably also took part in the this discussion, and they probably listened to me today. And we keep on talking about these things in the classroom, and probably the new generation um, uh, should be aware about these facts. And I again and again tell my students also that when you are in the university, feel that you are one of the privileged children in the whole society, who are very much at the fingertip of the whole society, who are in the who are just top most privileged people, who can get a kind of university education. Many people are not able to get that privilege when you are getting the university education or something like in higher education space. So therefore, please utilize this place well. And younger generation should be more enthusiastic to take part in the whole journey. And in pandemic also, they should have they should play a huge role in this kind of situation when they have already completed. We have all already completed school education, we have already completed our kind of higher education. If we don't think, probably who will think? That is a big question I have. Thanks.
Yes, yes, thank you, thank you. And we also congratulate all your students at School of Education at Azim Premji University. Really very rare institution. Their teachers and students do this kind of deep, also community engaged sort of research and education at the field. I would say very commendable. Many people do it for a very short while. But the tenure at which at the your institution has really focused, and all of you, it's really a lot of detailed thing coming out. So I would once again like to congratulate Professor Saraswati Payak for taking out time, especially on this day, on Children's Day, making her very important remark and finding, so that we minimize and have a positive impact on each citizen of our country. Indu sir, would you like to officially propose a vote of thanks?
Yes,
Wait,
yes, and I think
wait. Before that, I have a question, if I may ask Dr. Pai.
But yes,
Yeah.
but brief.
A brief question actually, because as I was hearing your presentation, I was just looking at my own life, and you could say it's a privileged life, but coming from a difficult background. But what I saw in my own classroom was that girls were always more. Even through my master's program or even through my bachelor's program, and girls were more interested, they were scoring higher also. I don't know whether it's social pressure for girls to be more educated and do more well. So when I hear other data where girls are dropping out more, and I know that that's a reality within our patriarchal structure where many girl children are killed as well. But how do you then speak to that paradox where where you have a situation where girl children are more discriminated against, and those of marginalized genders are discriminated against? Like in some schools, a transgender child, now they are on forms. Earlier they were not even on forms, they could not write. So how do you respond to that paradox where you have this reality, but also like someone like me in my classroom, it was always more girls than boys, and girls were more interested, asking more questions, like more keen on things. So yeah, your response.
Same here in my classroom as well. I have more girls other than boys in my class right now in first year and second year both. What happens? I have seen some people who are just excluded till 10th or 12th grade. They are majority who are not able to reach that to college life or university life. But majority of the girls who are coming from that kind of underprivileged background, in that way I was also I am not from an economically underprivileged background, but I also completed my school education in a remote area, in the rural area. And then when I moved to college education, I could see the other side of the whole world. And probably because of that kind of situation I have faced there, I didn't want to go back. And probably your tenacity and kind of rigor for education, it automatically goes up because you have to make it. Otherwise, you have that fate which is lying over there. So probably many of my students also say that they just want to complete it because until unless they complete it, they will get into this same kind of situation what their other counterparts are facing. They don't just want to go back to there, and they try their best to put their best effort. And that I always see that the girls who are all coming out of that kind of scenario, or they are coming from a privilege or underprivileged, I can't see the difference in between these two at that point. But girls really put a lot of effort at that point. But probably we are losing some girls, who could be also in your class, who could be bright in your class in a lot of discussions, and they will actually add on value. And I can see these girls who are coming from that kind of background, they are actually adding value when you are talking about the exclusion. Sometimes what happens, the kind of discussion starts with some example, which is a live example where a girl is talking about her own life, or just on the previous day just messaging, can you please share it, I don't want to share it in the class. I share it without naming that girl, and that triggers that whole discussion. So what I'm trying to say is, that is very true. And there at one level probably you can't see that there is a privileged versus underprivileged, what kind of proportion. But what is also true that there are socially, economically, and physically underprivileged people who are not able to make it. We are probably losing those girls. On the other hand, if you look at the boys are more focused on the livelihood options at one point of time, especially beyond 12. Lot of pressure on them just to earn money, because we look at boys as the source of money, income generation, etc., rather than girls. And therefore that is one of the reasons actually I wanted to talk about that a little bit, about the girls dropout. Till now we think girl as in many families as a girl as a commodity, which will be going to another family, and that commodity will not be part and parcel of this family, her earning will not be part and parcel of this family, and therefore we don't prioritize girls education. But those who can make it, they are just there, and you can see as a teacher, you can see that, right? That is the response to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that response.
Yes,
So
yes,
I
I would
think,
say that
yes. Arjun.
going there is a necessary condition, but not sufficient. So that's also, this anyhow. Let us wrap and really thank you, Professor Paik. Indu sir, yes.
Yes, yes. No, I think I just want to thank, Shashwati for the interesting presentation, all the discussions, and the people who added their points. I think it was, we actually had a Diwali, a very serious Diwali on a very, very serious note. So I think surely, we'll be able to make some differences. Thanks, Shashwati ji, for this excellent presentation.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Happy
Thank you.
Diwali.
Thank you, Siti. Thank you.
Have a nice evening. Yes.
And
Bye.